Cola looks so beautiful. So pretty quiet for the southeast right now, but like I said, weather cranks up for the weekend. Let's check out where Decima is at the moment. Here it is right over the Rocky Mountains. This is water vapor imagery, and as we look into the next several days, this is by Saturday, so your weekend is looking very wet. That jet stream really dips south and allowing Decima to go ahead and inch towards the southeast. So it's going to be pulling in a lot of warm moisture and bringing in an unsettled atmosphere. So we actually have really strong winds at about 5,000 feet above the ground, and those surface winds will actually collide and bring in an enhanced chance for some severe thunderstorms possible. So this is the severe thunderstorm threat in that red area. We have thunderstorms expected in that orange. Let's check out that Torcon though. So we have a Torcon of 3. That means you have a 30% chance of seeing a tornado within a 50-mile radius, and that's encompassing Louisiana, Mississippi, parts of Alabama, and even extended into Tennessee. Here's the rainy side of Decima. This is Friday night. We're kind of backtracking. So it starts late tomorrow night and it continues all the way through the weekend. Notice this chance of thunderstorms, lots of unsettled weather across the area. So that continues. Notice even a chance of freezing rain, even some snow over Tennessee, and that will continue to slide eastward into Sunday. Allison?
All right, well, so the northeast side of the storm is going to be dealing with winter weather, and the region is already starting to prepare. In fact, in Connecticut, they've already put down some of the salt. Let's take a look at some of the impacts that we're going to be seeing for portions of the northeast. Now, we have some of those lake effect snow bands still coming down across portions along Lake Ontario and into Lake Erie. But that cold air is not just for the northern half of the country. It stretches all the way down into the Appalachian Mountains. Again, you're taking a look at cities like Murphy, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, even some of the eastern suburbs of Knoxville that are going to be dealing with incredibly cold temperatures. But now you factor in, as Decima begins to edge closer, it's going to be pulling in a lot of warm and moist air, and that's going to overrun some of that colder air that's already in place. And unfortunately, when you have all of that collides together, you end up getting that icy mix, which is in the forecast for areas of North Georgia, also portions of the higher elevations of Tennessee, and also into North Carolina. Then we take a little bit farther north, where again we have the potential for a little bit of a mix, because we also have that warm air colliding with the cold air, even to say as far north as the mid-Atlantic. So when you go into Saturday, again, we're talking Pittsburgh, mostly rain on Saturday, but by Sunday we're looking at that transition to change over into that snow, ice, and rain mix, which again is not what you want to have on the roadways. Buffalo looks at that point to finally start to dry back out as those temperatures get much, much colder behind the storm. That's right, and we're talking about severe weather for portions of the southeast. And again, now we're not talking a widespread severe event. In fact, most of the severe will be confined to just along the frontal area. So we're talking Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas will be the main threat for this. Now, the main threats are going to be hail and damaging winds, but we cannot rule out a tornado with this system. In fact, we have a Torcon of 3 for areas like Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi as we go into Saturday. So here's the setup. We start Friday night, and as that system begins to edge its way towards the east, we start to see the convective development. We're going to start to add some thunder into some of these storms, and then the potential for the severe weather exists on Saturday, even through Saturday night. But notice one thing, the cold air coming to wrap back around. So by the time we get to Sunday, some of those same areas that may have been under the threat for severe weather may also be dealing with some of the weather impacts as well.
How about as we work our way to the weekend? We're almost there. You can almost taste it, right? We're close to it. Saturday.
There we go.
Eastern half of the country.
Look at how much snow, a mix of rain, ice, and snow possible right across Chicago. And then wet, and those thunderstorms kick in. And then for Sunday, let's check that out.
Yeah, wet up and down the East Coast. But Liana, look at the cold air coming right back in. Dallas, 34. All
right, thank you so much. Yes, and we've talked extensively about the cold aspect and also the snow aspect. But one thing that kind of gets a little under the radar is the wind threat for some of these areas.
Today and tonight, it's going to get very gusty across parts of the Northeast. We have the high wind warnings and high wind watches out for many locations. And you might at first look at the weather map and say, I don't see how it's going to be that windy, but you can look at the satellite picture and be like, okay, I get it, right? Giant circulation, a really tight circulation moving across parts of southeastern Canada, moving over parts of the Northeast. Though not windy way up top near the jet stream, at about 5,000 feet above the ground, it's going to be very windy, and some of that wind is going to get to the ground.
That's right. right. And it's those subtle things like this wind event where it's not necessarily as obvious when you look at it. Those are the ones that can catch you off guard and can end up being pretty big system makers. When you're talking winds of 40 miles per hour, gusts, Greg, you were saying 50, maybe even 55 miles per hour, and that could end up causing some power concerns as well.
I think you're right, and I think we will have some wind gusts at times over 50 miles per hour in some of these regions because of those strong winds aloft will be moving in across parts of the Northeast, and that will be impacting, I think, at its most intense way probably late this afternoon and tonight. So just be prepared. As you were saying, you might get some power outages and trees down. That's certainly a possibility.
That's right. And then on the flip side, we've been talking about the cold temperatures, but what about to the areas that may not necessarily be used to it, like those in the north, like Texas, for example?
This is a great story because when you get these Arctic air masses coming into the United States, oftentimes they come with them very dramatic temperature contrasts all at once. It's almost like in a matter of minutes. You're in 70s and then you're in 20s. You're like, oh my goodness. This is an example of one of those. Tomorrow's high temperatures across the southern plains, Allison, you and I are talking about pretty nice in the mid-70s.
That's right. I mean, Lubbock, 75, 73 for Dallas, even mid-60s for Oklahoma City. But we're talking a super sharp contrast just 2 days later.
Big old Arctic high-pressure system is going to be sliding down the plains with nothing in its way. Maybe some cows, but they're not going to be able to stop the cold air, right? It's just going to go all the way down to the Gulf Coast during the day, probably on Saturday and Saturday night, such that by Sunday morning, look at some of these lows.
Again, and you were talking about how it happens so quickly. So for a city, say, like Dallas, you're talking maybe only a difference of 12 hours that we're talking a huge drop in temperatures.
So let's look at Dallas and look at the temperature forecast from Saturday afternoon all the way through Saturday night and Sunday morning. Starting off in the 70s. You like that?
Fantastic.
Beautiful. But by midnight, it's 30. What happened?
Not fantastic.
Not fantastic. And it just continues on. And during the day on Sunday, you'll probably be in the 20s. So you will have lost about 50 degrees from one day just to the next.
And we talked about this too. The other thing is there's not even that hope that, well, maybe it'll just warm back up on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because it's really not. I mean, you're talking maybe high, maybe near freezing mark at best. So yes, going from 70s to a high around the freezing mark, yeah, that's a super quick change that maybe a lot of these folks may not be ready for.
Right, and that's exactly right. And it's going to come like a ton of bricks. And so just be aware of it. We're trying to give you a heads up across the south. Cold air is coming.
Thank you very much for that. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Greg Postel. Liana, Alex.